The soundtrack to the classic PlayStation JRPG Wild Arms is among my most loved in all of gaming. The score, composed by Michiko Naruke, effortlessly blends tried and true classical composition with the aesthetic of the American West, which was a conscious decision to reflect the game's fantasy world. Among the synthesized instruments are other more idiosyncratic sounds like the stringed instruments popular in the time period, namely the guitar and mandolin. Trumpets and varied woodwinds make their presence known in a number of characters' themes, especially those of the three main characters, Rudy, Jack, and Cecilia. The biggest influence of the Western aesthetic can be heard in the introductory piece, Into the Wilderness. As a child, I would beg my mother to reset her game on our PSX constantly, just so I could watch the FMV that accompanied this piece. It was largely influential in my learning the guitar later in life, and shaped my idea of how compositions can reflect the content of the film or game they accompany. The American Old West clearly left its mark on the developers of Wild Arms, which tells the story of three unlikely heroes as they team up to save their world. To introduce this world and spur the sense of adventure, Media Vision created an anime-style FMV that evoked tones of other Western-themed anime such as Trigun, and showed the player scenes of the main characters and several other key story moments. I'll leave it to you to check out the intro on YouTube. It's fantastic. But without Into the Wilderness, the animation would fall flat. That's how powerful this track is. Let's take a look at how it's constructed and the particularly inventive ways that Naruke evokes the Western setting. The influences are definitely on this track's sleeve. Naruke emulated Ennio Morricone's classic soundtracks to spaghetti westerns. A clear influence can be heard in the Fistful of Dollars suite. Several elements can be heard that I will explore further as we progress through the song. We first hear the tentative plucks of two guitars in the key of D minor, one in melody and one in rhythm. The straight eighths and divided melody ease us into the track, which is accompanied by the treble of a triangle. These give way to a classic Western trope, the iconic whistle, provided here by Naoki Takao, and an active guitar accompaniment with a walking bass line. If you isolate the guitar, you can hear this bass line, which features a leading tone hammered onto the higher adjacent chord tone, followed by the root note on the next quarter note in the rhythm. The particular tone played changes with the chord. On the bass D minor, the fourth is hammered onto the fifth, from G to A, whereas in the C major that follows, the second is hammered onto the third, from D to E. This non-uniformity leads to a very interesting accompaniment rather than just a static rhythm part. Takao's whistling is our focus for this first verse section, tracing out a melody in D minor that dances above the midtones of the guitar. As the melody concludes, the second guitar returns in a short counter melody that plays off the theme. This leads to a fuller arrangement, with a string section, upright bass, and percussion joining the fray. The gentle snare roll is a classic element of Western music, and provides a sense of urgency and movement to the piece. The offbeats are accentuated by a tambourine throughout, providing a steady beat usually reserved for the snare drum in popular music. As the second repetition of the whistle melody ends, the strings take over the melody duties and provide us with a new, flowing, heroic theme. At this section's conclusion, a woodwind trill signals a key change that shifts us up a third, from the key of D to the key of F. This is a common compositional technique that carries emotional weight. Any melody or accompaniment that moves up a third seems to be more insistent or urgent. Another great example of this is the final chorus of Bon Jovi's Livin' on a Prayer. Trumpets and other brass join in to support the strings in this short interlude before they return to the main melody once again in the biggest refrain of the piece. Short trumpet stabs accentuate the gaps in the melody and the bass pumps insistently. As the melody draws to a close, the orchestration slowly drops out as well, leaving only the whistles and guitars we began with. A string swell is replaced with that of the woodwinds, and the guitar repeats the galloping motif from the beginning of the piece. At the end of it all, the guitar tessets or ends, and we are left with a shaker and the lonely ding of the triangle, symbolizing the emptiness and solitude of the wilderness. Into the Wilderness not only reflects the content of the accompanying animation, but also the game itself. Isolation is a theme of Wild Arms, with the three main characters' arcs exploring their relationship with their own isolation. Thus, it is fitting that the theme song doesn't end with a bombastic crescendo, but the whisper-quiet ding of the Lonely Triangle. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of Into the Wilderness and found a little insight into what makes this song not only fitting for the story, but for the context in which it's presented. If you like this and want more of it, please like the video and subscribe to the MetaVillains channel. Until next time, I'm Daniel Diaz-Brock, and these are my notes on notes.